then the appointment phase. And where we had talked briefly about was this. So I'm going to just write it up here so you guys can see it again. And that is when you're prospecting, we want to be prospecting on two parallel tracks. So we want to be looking for business both now and in the future. So what we don't want to do is just get caught up in only looking for now deals, which is what happens though, actually, is it is very common for agents to feel like, hey, I need some money. And so I need to go get a deal that's going to close for me right away. And so we get so focused on this now business. But part of what we need to remember is that not everyone that you call on the phone is going to be ready today. Meaning there are people who are not going to buy or sell a house today, but in maybe 6 months from now they will, or 9 months from now, or a year from now. And for me, I always ask, do you plan on still being in business a year from now? And if you do, why not, while you're prospecting today, generate your business for a year later or 6 months or whatever at the same time? And hopefully that makes sense, because here's what I would say to you. If this business does not get easier for you the longer that you're in the business, there's a problem. It should be getting easier the longer that you're in the business, meaning deals should be coming to you, and or if you're doing this right, you are setting up your future business while you're prospecting now that allows you to then do even more business later. All right, so with that in mind, I want to give you one other piece. So I mentioned that what we're going to do today is I'm going to make a list up here in a little bit of all the possible ways that you can generate business, and then we're going to go through and talk about it. But before we do that, I want to just hit on one other thing with in terms of the buyer and seller cycle, and why this makes so much sense and why it's so important for you to remember this now and the future business type of a thing. So real quick though, on for Zoom, I forgot to mention to you guys, so if you want to be able to see the board a little bit better, if you go to like the gallery view where you can see a bunch of the screens if you're on a computer, and then hover over the three dots that are on one of them and pin the video if you want to be able to see what I'm writing on the board a little bit better. I'll continue to tell you what I'm writing up there, but just so you guys know. All right, so now let's go through and talk about the buyer and the seller cycle, because what it's going to look like is this. There are 3 phases to this buyer or the seller cycle. And so I want to walk you through this process. And I had mentioned, for you two that are here with me in person weren't here yesterday, but a story that I told yesterday in class, which a bunch of the people that were here yesterday are on Zoom today. But I talked about how once I started focusing on setting appointments, my business really took off. Rather than focusing on a certain number of contacts, I would prospect every day until I got an appointment. Well, as a result of that, my business took off. And I had mentioned yesterday that what happened is I had a friend ask me when I was going to be moving, because he said, seems like real estate's going well for you, so when are you going to be moving? And I said, I'm not going to move, yet within a year I moved. Now, as a result of that, and that process that I went through on that, not long after is when I then discovered this, what I'm going to share with you guys now. Because this is a process that everybody goes through before they buy or sell. Now, the length of time of this, I'll tell you what it is on average, but it's going to vary depending on each person that you're dealing with. So the first phase of this buyer or the seller cycle is what we would call percolation. Now, when you hear that, when you hear the word percolate, and this goes for you guys on Zoom, so I'm not just relying only on you guys. So either unmute or throw it in the chat box. What do you think about when you hear the word percolate?
Like a coffee maker.
Okay, good. So like a coffee maker. So and when you hear percolate and you think about coffee, what is it doing when it's percolating?
It's like starting to boil.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it. Is how I would say, and in terms of like water, and in the mountains when it percolates, it's going on under the surface. And so think about that in terms of when I talk about the first phase that anybody is going to go through in terms of buying or selling a home is this percolation phase. So now to continue the story from yesterday that I had shared with the people that were online or in person, was I had this neighbor say to me, if you were to move, or when are you going to move? And I said, I'm not moving. And as we talked about, if somebody came and knocked on my door, so if you came and knocked on my door, or you called me on the phone and you asked me, so, hey, when are you going to be moving? I would have said never. Yet, within a year, I moved. So keep that in mind. So after this friend asked me, so when are you going to be moving? And I said to him, no plans, not going to happen. Well, not long after that, so let me kind of draw somewhat for you guys. I don't think we have anybody. Do we have anybody from California on? I don't think we do. As I look through this. I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter, I guess. So just kind of so that you guys can get some background on this, is the house that I was living at was at just about 5600 West and 6200 South. So picture this here. Here's 6200 South. Here's 5600 West. I lived in this neighborhood that was right here. Okay. Now my office that I worked at for real estate. So here's Bangerter Highway. Here's Redwood Road. This down here is now 7800 South. The office that I worked at was just on the other side of Redwood Road and 7800 South. Well, if any of you are familiar with it, and I haven't been there for now 20 years, but at the time, what would happen is I would drive down here and I would either get on Bangerter and go to 78th, or I'd go to Redwood Road and go to 78th to get to my office. Well, not long after this guy asked me, when am I going to move? And I said, I'm never moving. Not long after that, I remember I'm driving along here, and during quote unquote for us rush hour, which is the reason I asked if we had any California people, because they would probably make fun of me for saying rush hour. But for us, rush hour traffic going this way in the morning until you get to Bangerter Highway was always pretty backed up right in here. And then it would free up and you were fine, or I would turn and get on Bangerter and it was fine. But I was sitting in traffic right there the one day. And I remember saying to myself, well, if I ever did move, it would be east of Bangerter Highway because I hate the traffic. Now, in that moment, what I didn't realize it at the time, but in that moment right then, I started percolation. Because percolation is when you just start to think about it. And so you'll notice, you guys that were with me yesterday, you'll notice that one of the things that I say in my prospecting, and I don't think I pointed this out to you guys yesterday, so I'll point it out today, and you guys will want to use this, is in your prospecting, one of the things to do is to ask people, well, if you ever were to move, where would you go next? Because what it does is think of it as planting a seed. It's almost like you're planting a seed in them by asking them this, if you ever were to move, where would you go next? You're planting a seed that not every time is the seed going to take root, but it might. And that's what's interesting is I look back on, for me, my friend asking me, when are you going to move? He planted a seed of moving in me that I look back now and I see that's where it all started. But yet, keep in mind, I said I'm not going to move. So now here's what happened though. So let me keep going with the story. So I'm sitting here one day and I just think, well, if I ever to move, it would be east of Bangerter Highway. Well, so then what happens is I continue on to work, no big deal. Well, one of the days that I'm driving along, I come up past Bangerter Highway. So I'm now east of Bangerter Highway. And I notice right here, this subdivision, it was a field, but now all of a sudden there's a builder building houses there. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. They're starting to build there. Didn't really think much about it, but noticed that they were building there. Well, after a couple of months of that, I drive by and I notice that some of the houses that they're building are pretty nice. So I just decide one day to turn down this road that's right here. So I turn down 3200 West and I turn into here and drive through the neighborhood. And I notice there's a park with a pool, and the houses they were building were nice houses. And I just continued on then and drove back and went to work. Well, as a result of that, hey, come on in. So as a result of that, as I'm driving there, I just continue on to work. Don't really think much about it. Well, then the next time I'm in the car with my wife, though, I'm driving along and I'm like, hey, did you notice this neighborhood that they're building? Now, let me pause for a minute. Driving through there and just checking out this neighborhood is percolation. Okay. I didn't realize it at the time, but that's percolation is happening. So then the next time I'm in the car with my wife and we drive through here, I tell her, hey, did you notice these houses they're building in this neighborhood? And she says, no. And I'm like, oh, check this out. So I drive down here. I'm like, look, there's a park and they're going to have a swimming pool. And like, look at these. They're working on the model home right now. It's pretty nice. She's like, yeah, it is nice. Think nothing of it. But again, here's what's going on. This is percolation. During percolation, again, if you would have come and knocked on my door, you called me on the phone and you said to me, Russ, when do you plan on moving? Guess what I would have said? Never. I'm not planning to move. Yet within a year I had moved. Now, I recognize now what was going on, but at the time I didn't realize what was going on was I was in this percolation phase where what happens is you just think about it for a little while, okay? Now, I then, every day on my way to work, or not necessarily every day, but a lot of times I would kind of drive by and just see what was going on, or on my way home, I would come by and see what was going on in this neighborhood and watching them, and pretty soon the model home's built. So the next time I'm in the car with my wife, I say, did you notice they've got a model home here now? We should go stop in. So we pull up front, we stop, we get out of the car, we go walking in, and when I walk into the model home, of course, you guys have all been there with a salesperson. What is it that you think that I said when she opened the door and says, come on in? Yeah, I said what everybody says, we're just looking. Now, here's the interesting thing. Now that you guys are starting to understand what I'm telling you, when somebody says they're just looking, are they lying? No, they're not lying when they say they're just looking. But what you need to understand is they're probably in this percolation phase. They're probably just in percolation, which means they are just thinking about it. And in their mind, they are going to say to you, I'm just looking. I really am not serious about, I just was curious. I'm not thinking about buying a home. You need to understand that that is a normal thing for them to say that, because they're in the percolation phase and it's going on under the surface. So they're not aware that it's actually happening. Making sense? Okay. So now when I walked into that model home though, what I realize now, I didn't at the time, but what I realize now is when I walked into that model home, I was entering the next phase. The next phase of this is what's called information gathering. So this is phase one, is just percolation. You're just thinking about it. And they'll do some research and they'll look at things. They'll go online and search houses and those kinds of things. And if you call them, they'll say, I'm not planning on doing anything. And the reason they're saying that is because they're in the percolation phase and they're not aware that they are headed down a process that's going to lead them to buy or sell a home. Now, yesterday we talked about that you would knock on people's doors or in your own neighborhood or whatever, and somebody will tell you, I'm not planning on moving, I'm not planning on moving. And then months later, there's a for sale sign in their front yard. And inside, we're like, they told me they weren't going to. Well, you may have been, if you went and knocked on somebody's door, you talked to them about what was going on in the market or whatever, you may have started them in this percolation process, and then because you weren't there when it was time for information gathering, they went somewhere else, and then when they get to the next phase, you're not there, so they just moved on without you. See, part of why when I say this, we're prospecting now and in the future, hopefully you're starting to see the tie together of how this works. Go ahead, Carla.
Well, I'm just thinking as far as nature, that I think we're all ingrained to continuing to getting something bigger and better. And that natural process, like you said, one day, I like that analogy of the plant. The seed doesn't always take root, but it could be one thing that makes that grow. And it's not necessarily they want to progress to something bigger, but better. And for you, it was the route to work.
Mm-hmm. But the house is bigger too.
Something better, yeah.
It was bigger and better. So yeah, so here's what happened. So as soon as I walked in, actually the first thing I said to this agent, which was slightly different than what you guys said, which is I'm just looking, is I walked in and said, see, I want you to understand, people will use this to their advantage as well. if it fits. Is I walked in and the first thing I said is, I'm a real estate agent and I'm just here because I want to get familiar with the inventory. I wanted to know kind of what your prices are. I wanted to get an idea so that I could talk to my clients about it. Now, why would I walk in and do that? Why did I go in and say, hey, I'm actually just here because I want to be familiar with the inventory. I want to be able to tell my clients about the homes.
Because they'll give you the information without pressuring you.
Oh, hang on. Whoever's talking, I got you turned down too much. Hold on. All right, go ahead, Zoom.
It's because they'll give you all the information without pressuring you to buy or contact you.
Whoa, that didn't work very well, Philip. We could hear you, but it sounded like Charlie Brown's teacher. Try it again.
Okay, is it working?
Yeah, that's better. There's a little bit of an echo for some reason, but.
Yeah, I'm getting an echo on my end too. I don't know why. So I was saying that they will give you all the information they want without pressuring you to buy or keep contacting you about.
Yeah, we still couldn't hear you. I think I get what you're saying though. So yeah, here's the idea of it is, which are you guys online? Are you getting an echo while I'm talking or was it just while you were talking? I'm assuming. Bria's saying it's because everyone's not muted on
Got
Zoom.
noise going in the background, Russ.
What's that?
Somebody's not muted and they have noise going in the background. I think that's what the echo is.
All right. Well, I'll mute you guys. You can unmute yourself if you want to say something. So I think I've got everyone muted now. So, all right. All right. So ultimately, here's what happened. So keep in mind, again, you got to, here's the funny thing is I'm having to explain this to you guys because from the standpoint of an agent, we don't understand it. From the standpoint of the consumer, you get it. You totally understand this. But for whatever reason, as you come into real estate now and you become a salesperson, all of a sudden we don't understand what's going on. But when you're the consumer, you do all this stuff I'm talking about. And so for me, when I'm training it to you, it's because I figured this out because I was doing it. And I looked back after the fact and was saying, why did I tell my friend I'm never moving? And then a year later, I ended up moving. And how did I get there? How did I get to that process? And it's through that, figuring that out that this came to be. Now, here's what happened. The reason I walked in and said to her is I'm a real estate agent and I'm just looking for my clients is because as an agent walking in saying that to her, what's my assumption of what's going to happen? Well, for her, that's her assumption. What's my assumption of why am I saying that when I go in?
Because you're assuming he's going to try to sell you.
And yeah, that's right. And I don't want him to. I don't want the model home agent to try to sell me a house. And so because I don't want to be sold, I'm going to give whatever excuse that makes the most sense for them to not bother me. Now, for most people, the thing that makes the most sense is what? To say to you what? Just looking. I'm just looking. See, that's what makes sense. The reason they say that, if they had a better excuse like I did, which is I'm a real estate agent and I'm just here to see what you guys have available, kind of look at prices. See, it's a way for me to gather information by convincing the agent not to bug me because I'm not really a real buyer. So don't bother calling me. Don't try to set an appointment, blah, blah, blah. Your potential clients are going to do the exact same thing to you. It's just for them, the most logical thing to say is, I was just curious. Does that make sense? Okay. So then what happened is I went in and said that. She gave me a pamphlet that had all the prices of the houses. Well, as soon as my wife and I left, and I don't know if we were going home or where, but we got to dinner, we got to home, whatever. We pull out this pamphlet and we start looking through. And the first thing my wife's like is, we can't afford any of these. We wouldn't be able to afford any of these houses. And I was like, well, I mean, we don't really know. Like, let me talk to the loan officer that I was using at the time and let's see what he says. See, so all of that is, let's go see if we can qualify. Let's find out where we're at. Let's take a look at those things. All of this is information gathering. Does that make sense? Now, again, even though I was in information gathering, if you would have knocked on my door or called me on the phone and asked me about buying or selling, I would have said, I'm not moving. Even if you were my friend that said, hey, so are you going to be moving? I would have said, no, we're not moving. We're just checking this out. We're not really planning to do anything. Okay. So what happens even during information gathering? So let me explain it this way. I have it drawn up here with like, this is phase 1, this is phase 2. It is not like the people recognize, oh, this morning I woke up and I'm in information gathering. It doesn't happen that way. It is obscure, meaning they don't even realize that they are moving from percolation to information gathering. Like I said, when I walked in, partially at a conscious level to myself, I actually believed I really was just getting the information so that I would be aware to share it with my clients.
Can those two be switched? I mean, let's just say there was something going on in, in an area, and you certainly hadn't even started percolating, but you went and gathered information, and then you took that home, and then that really started percolating. Well, maybe we could do this. Maybe we should move. I mean, is it?
That's a good question. I would say absolutely. I would say it's possible that some information is what plants the seed to percolate. Absolutely. Yeah. And in fact, that's part of. If you remember yesterday, I said to Dan Andreezy that was down in California, I said to him, he had asked about your SOI, and I said, yeah, for your SOI, call them up and say, I want to come out and just share with you a market analysis of what's going on in your neighborhood, because that would be giving them information, which could then plant the seed to have them start percolating. So absolutely, that is possible. All right. Any questions so far on this? Okay, next phase then of this is what we would call the active phase. Now here's the thing. In this active phase right here, when I talk about now and future prospecting for now business and future, when I talk about that, the now business is this active. That's the area that we are wanting to capture people in. See, the challenge that agents have is when they're prospecting is they are looking for the now business. We're trying to capture people here in this active phase. But I already shared with you, so let me just see if you caught it when I shared it. But what is the challenge that we're going to have of capturing somebody in the active phase? Why is it going to be hard?
You might have an agent already.
Why? You're right. Why?
Because if they're gathering information, they've probably been spoken to by somebody who's given them the information.
Yeah. So I'm going to just repeat it, just make sure Zoom heard. But what's going on is by the time people hit this phase, they have already been doing the information gathering. And during the information gathering, they're figuring out. See, what happens is stuff like this. They'll go meet Brandon to go see a house or whatever. Like you knocked on their door. It doesn't matter. But they'll meet him, and in the process of that, they'll think, wow, I really liked him. He was a nice guy. Like if we did buy a house, we should use him. Or they meet me and they go, he's a jerk. I would never work with somebody like that. He's too old or whatever. Like they're going to do something. They might meet you and go, I'm not working with a woman. Or they might say, I'm not working with a man. Like it could go either way. It doesn't have to be like, just know people are going to say, you have short hair, you have long hair, you have glasses, you don't have glasses. Like they're going to make decisions based on all that kind of stuff in this process that when it comes time for the active phase, they have already figured out probably who they're working with. So now what I don't want you to leave here thinking is that, well, I can't capture anybody here based on what Russ said. That's not what I'm saying. But here is what I am saying. Especially for newer agents, your skill level to capture these people is going to have to be higher. Meaning, you're going to have to ask for an appointment, typically to capture somebody in this phase. So here's the ironic thing. We want to get people who are now business. I mean, right? We want that because you want to get paid like right away. At least I do. I don't know about you guys, but I want to get paid. So if that's the case, I really should try to capture some people here. Now, here's the challenge though. Typically, most people, and I've listened to a lot of agents make phone calls, typically most agents will give up too easily. Meaning, you get on the person and they say, well, we've thought about it. And then you say, well, let's get an appointment or whatever. And then, no, that's okay. We're good. We're just looking. We were just curious. And then what happens is we give up on it, hang up and move on. But the person was in one of these two phases. You missed them. And so now when they hit here, you're not around to capture them. See, in order to capture the people here, which they are capturable by us still, the people in the active phase, but here's what it's going to take. You're going to have to ask for the appointment 3 to 5 times, meaning you're going to have to be told no 3 to 5 times to capture these people that are in this phase. So your skill levels you got to have ways of when somebody tells you no, of not just going, okay, well, I don't know what else to say, goodbye. You got to have ways of saying to them, well, hey, I totally understand. And if I were you, I'd feel that same way. Let me ask you though, have you had a chance to sit down and talk to anybody about what's going on in the market? No, I haven't. Okay, well, one of the things that I do is I just will sit down with my clients and go through what's going on in the market. That way, when you are ready down the road, you'll have the information. So what works better for you, afternoons or evenings? Well, no, we're not really interested. Okay, you're not interested in that. I totally understand. If I were you, I'd feel the same way. But let me ask you, when the time does come, would you rather be over-prepared or under-prepared? Well, of course, we'd rather be over-prepared. Well, then what we ought to do is sit down and just spend 15 or 20 minutes so that I can just show you what's going on, and then I can keep you updated throughout the process so that when you are ready, you'll be more educated and more prepared, which ultimately means you're going to make more money. See, we got to keep being able to kind of go through and do this. In fact, one of the ways that I like to think of it is this, and hopefully, yeah, that's pretty good. Think of it as this figure 8 here, and you're going to ask question, and then ask for an appointment. They're going to say no. You're going to ask question, ask for an appointment. No, question, ask for an appointment. Like, think of it as that's
kind of on the same phone call.
Yes.
Ooh, okay.
Now you understand though, Bren. Now you understand why I'm saying you can capture these people, but you're going to have to be willing to do this loop over and over and over again. So, was there a question? I think I saw you unmute, Philip, or was that an accident? I got nothing. All right. Must have been an accident. Yeah, you're going to have to do that loop of, hey, totally understand, hey, but let me ask you, if you did, blah, blah, or whatever, you're going to have to ask this or that. So does that make sense? Okay, so keep in mind that we got percolation, information gathering, and active. Of these 3 phases, the hardest one to get an appointment with is the active. And the reason is because they've already made decisions back here. You can do it, but you're going to have to ask 3 to 5 times for an appointment before you're going to get it.
And if you get the appointment in the earlier stages, would you recommend having like a slideshow or what do you bring to the table?
Good question. So I'm going to show you guys some slides here in just a little bit that you could use is one of them. But for the most part, usually what I did was I would go to our MLS. In fact, actually, I'm going to do a screen share from here. I'll just show you guys real quick. All right. Let me pull up. Oh, except you guys aren't going to be able to see it. So. All right, sorry guys, I'm going to pull up the MLS to just show you what I would recommend that you do. Except for I don't know if I remember my password. Oh, I didn't do that. All right, let me get this pulled up here. I'm just going to show you guys what I did when I would do those type of an appointment with somebody. Is this. So let me get the MLS pulled up here. Because here's one of the things that I would recommend that you guys do is one of the best things you can say when you're on a phone like that is one of the best things you can do to get someone to agree to an appointment with you is using the verbiage of, if you had a chance to sit down and talk to anybody about what's going on in the market today, they're going to say no. Like, I have very, very few times had somebody say yes. And if they did, I would act shocked. I was, you really did? Really? Who was it? Because I have just found people haven't done it. So I always use that as that's one of the ways. So remember I said you're gonna have to ask 3 to 5 times. One of the ways that I ask that you will get told no on, but I also got told yes more times than not on this, was, have you had a chance to sit down and talk to anybody about what's going on in the market today? They would say no, and I'd say, great. When would be a good time for us to spend just 15 or 20 minutes so I can walk you through what's going on, show you what's happening in the market, and then I'll just stay in touch with you to keep you updated so that when you are ready, you'll be one of the most prepared buyers. All right, so if you go on the MLS and go to statistics and then sales per month, and then for me, I usually just like to do it for most of my business is all in Salt Lake County. So I would just go to Salt Lake County, but if you guys are Davis County or Utah County or Weaver or whatever, you can just do it based on that. You can go as far back if you want as to 1996. I usually just left it with 2015 was fine. And then I'm just gonna hit view results. So the only thing I changed on this, I went to, again, just to remind you, statistics, sales per month, and then I threw in the county. You could do it by city if you wanted. You could do it by neighborhood, however you want to do it. But then from here, I just hit view results. And then it brings up and shows in Salt Lake County how many homes are selling each month. And you can go back, like I said, I've got it to 2015. But typically what I would always do is show them, which by the way, guys, this July, 2,101 is the most that's ever sold in Salt Lake County in a month. Like, the highest prior to that was in the 1900 range, and that was back in 2000 and something. I don't know, 2007, I think, something like that. All right. So, but here's all I would do for me is I mean, we're halfway through September, so I never would pay attention to this. This August number is probably pretty close now to being accurate. It usually takes a few weeks into the next month for that to get finalized, but regardless, I would be just showing them, you know, in July there were 2,100 homes that sold. In August there was 1,794. Here's the total volume. The median sold price, which we'll talk more about, is 385,000 is what it was. And so if you look at this, I mean, look at what's happened in the last year to home prices, from 349 or 345 to 385. 40. So here's the thing. Part of what I'm hoping you guys are seeing from this is people are getting a lot of equity in the last year. People who even bought a year ago. Is it possible there are people who bought a year ago that aren't too excited about the home they bought? Absolutely. And if you went and showed them, hey, you got $40,000 on average in equity, they might be interested in doing it. Here's the other thing. I had an agent that I was listening to make phone calls. I think it was probably last Friday, I think it was, that scheduled an appointment to go meet with somebody who has said, I want to buy, but I can't afford what I want. And so I'm just going to wait till I can make more money and get some money saved up so I can buy it. Well, for the average person, in a year, are they going to be able to save up $40,000? Probably not. And so what I recommended to this agent is you need to go talk to this person and say, look, I get it that you can't afford what you want right now, but look at what's happening in the market right now. Like, why not go get a property? Because here's the problem. Let's say that he saves up $40,000 in that year even. It really did nothing for him.
Appreciate about 40,000 more next year.
Yeah, because he's going to spend that more in the property. So I said, go and explain this to that buyer to let them see, look, let's just get you into anything so that you can, as the property values go up, because here's my belief, guys, is, and here's the funny thing, is I've actually said this for a couple of years now. For a couple of years, 2 years ago, I started to say, our home prices are gonna double over the next 10 years. I believe that our home prices here in Utah will in 8 years from now will be double what they were 2 years ago, my belief. And here's why I say it, is we're boxed in by mountains. We're almost out of land and there's nowhere else to go, but yet tons and tons of people are coming here. And I think more and more are coming here even from out of state currently. Our home prices are gonna double. Well, prior to 2 years ago, I was saying, well, then there's no way people wouldn't be able to afford to buy a house. Well, I go do training at our California offices as well. And when this hit me was about 2 years ago, I was down in our California office and we were talking about down there, their home prices are more than double what ours are. And it hit me, they still afford to buy houses. So ultimately, my crystal ball is broken, but here's the funny. 2 years ago, I said, the only thing I could see that would stop this, and this is not a joke, this is what I said, is the only thing that I could see stopping our prices from doubling is if some plague hit and wiped out half our population. And then now COVID, but still, as soon as COVID came, I was like, crap, like we might be in trouble. But thankfully, it's not wiping out half our population. So I still do believe our home prices are going to continue to go up, because if you keep an eye, if you just think about from simple economics of supply and demand, we have on a monthly basis, somewhere in this right here, I mean, it did slow down a bit here in March and April, kind of lower than what it would have been last year at this time, but it's ramped up exceedingly. But if you look at the supply, how many homes are available? None. There's hardly any available for sale. Well, just because of that, we have the demand, prices have to keep going up. Now, like I said, the only thing I can see changing that is if something crazy, I mean, if all of a sudden interest rates jump up to 9%, okay, that might hurt our home prices. But even if they go to 4 or 5, I still think we're going to see people still want to buy a home. They still want to have houses. So for me, sorry, I totally got off on a tangent there. But if you look at this, I just show them, here's where the median price is. I show them what's happening with home prices. See, again, remember I said part of what you're doing in percolation and or information gathering is if I'm sitting down with somebody who says we're just thinking about it, and I start showing them, hey, look, if you had bought a house last year, you'd have $40,000 in equity. What are you guys thinking right now when you see that? Yeah, I should have bought like 40 houses last year, is what I see. Like, why didn't I buy a house last year, a bunch of them? See, that's where, hopefully that's what you're seeing. That's what they're going to start to go and say, man, maybe we should look at it. Maybe we should start this a little bit sooner. So here's the other thing that I'll go through with you, which this is the other thing that's helpful. Remember I said, you want to be over-prepared or under? This is how I'm going to make them be over-prepared, is I'm going to show them, look, homes are selling at 100% of their median sale price to the original list price. So here's the thing. I don't know if I told you guys this yesterday, but I wrote an offer for my sister yesterday. Did I tell you guys yesterday my sister's looking? Okay. I got a sister who's looking to buy something, and we keep getting outbid. We've put in 2 offers. We've gotten outbid on them. Like, we're trying. In fact, so I wrote an offer yesterday for her on a piece of crap, actually. Like, it's just bad. And the reason we did it, though, is because we keep getting outbid, and she's like, I got to get somewhere that I can move into. So I'll take it, and then I'll just put less money down and put more into fixing the property up. So I wrote the offer. Who knows? We'll see what happens today. But here's my point of bringing that up with my sister is yesterday the home's listed at 210 in Springville. She wanted to offer 188. And I'm like, you realize we've been getting outbid. Well, yeah, but this house is still on the market. And here's what I have learned. It is amazing how a house can sit on the market because they did a price reduction about a week ago. A home could sit on the market. They did this price reduction. I will not be surprised if today I get a call saying, hey, we got multiple offers. We need your highest and best. Well, then all of a sudden now she's not going to be interested in the house anymore. But so I use this as a way of showing the buyers that we can't go in and ask for less on a home because they're selling basically at an average or a median of 100%. Which I'm surprised actually, because I'm hearing the property selling 20 to 30,000 above list price. So this really ought to be more like 104, 105% is but what the other thing that it tells me though too is we're probably seeing a lot that are not appraising. So then the seller, even though they're accepting an offer 20,000 higher, is probably having to come back down. But so I use that, and then the other thing I'm showing them is this median days on market over here. Look at how many days on market the homes are. So I'm just showing them of like, look, a home is not going to sit there for very long. But so the same thing goes with if it's a potential seller, is you want to show them, look, if we put your home on the market and it's not sold in 10 days, there's a problem. Does that make sense? All right, so you asked that question, Brandon. Does that answer what you were like?
Yeah.
So what am I going to do, kind of a thing? All right. Let me get this quick.
Hey Russ,
Yeah.
why does it show 2 Julys on there?
Shoot, I think it's not. Let me see. Let me see if I still have it. I'm only seeing one. It had June and July, and then it had July of 2019.
Maybe it just was weird on my screen and didn't see it right.
Yeah, that must be. I don't know. Not sure. All right. Actually, I probably shouldn't. Well, I'll put it back down. Okay, so with that in mind, any questions on this percolation information gathering active? So, all right. Let me do one other thing with it, and then we'll jump into some fun stuff. All right. This whole process is typically going to be a 6 to 9 month process. From when somebody starts percolating until they actually buy is typically going to be, or sell, is a 6 to 9 month. Now, a seller usually is going to be 12 to 18 months. Now, here's what I would say to you is here, I have been teaching this for about 15 years now. And here's what I will tell you. 15 years ago, I would say 100% it was 6 to 9 months this. But since 15 years ago, more and more people are going online and searching, meaning 15 years ago, there were not tons and tons of people going to the internet to look for houses. They were still getting them over at Smith's in the magazine as they walked out of the grocery stores where they were getting them. And so as a result of that, what I'm saying is this. Prior to the internet, people would percolate without us knowing they were percolating. Meaning they would go grab a magazine as they walked out of Smith, and they could go home and peruse houses, but we didn't really know that they were doing it until they would call and say, hey, I got a question about this house. Does it have a formal dining or whatever? Like they would ask does it have a pool, whatever. Well, so once they got to information gathering, we would start to know who they were. But with the internet and people going online and having to sign up on websites now, we're capturing people that are further this way. So to some extent, I think this process is more of a 9 to 12 now instead of a 6 to 9 months, depending on when you meet them. But I would still say on average, you're somewhere in that 6 to 9, even though it's probably closer. I guess let me rephrase it. 15 years ago, I would have said it's closer to 6 months. Today, I would say it's closer to 9, that people are going through this percolation, information gathering phase. Now, what's my point of all that? Why did I just spend basically 45 minutes telling you that? Yeah, essentially, that's what it is recognize that when you call, you're going to try to get an appointment. Remember yesterday, Carla, we talked about your job is to get an appointment when you're on the phone. But if you can't get one, then stay in touch with the people because they're going to follow through this process. And if you will stay in touch and keep being there for them over and over and over again, even if it's once a month, just checking in, just wanted to see if you had any questions. Here's the kind of stuff I would do. Hey, just giving you an update on the market that right now interest rates today. Did you guys see what FHA interest rate was today? 2.5%. Like that is nuts. It's nuts that it's that low. 2.5%. That's a great phone call to some of these people right now. Hey, I know you're not ready. I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure you knew interest rates on an FHA loan 2.5%. I did see one day that it dropped below 2.5, but we've been kind of in that 2.5, 2 3/4, 2.5, 2 3/4. I saw one day it dropped below, then it went right back up again. Like that's the kind of stuff that just wanted to give you this information. Make sure you're aware. And then what'll happen is hopefully think of it as we talked about a plant, you planted the seed. That phone call is just watering the seed, pulling out the weeds, that kind of stuff, so that it matures. And what happens is you just want to be there when it matures, so that, because then what will happen is they call you and go, Brandon, we just saw this house and we want to go take a look at it. Can you take us? Absolutely. And then you go show them. Does that make sense? Okay. So just keep in mind that this is what that process is going to look like. All right. So now with that, okay, this is where I want you guys on Zoom to get more involved. So even if it's just in the chat box, okay? Here's what I want you guys to do is I want to create a list now of, let me just look through the comments, see if I missed anything. I don't think so. All right. Here's what I want to do. I want to make a list of all the possible ways that we can generate leads. So you guys just start throwing them out. You guys on Zoom either unmute or type it in the chat box. I don't really care, but we're going to make 2 lists up here, potentially 3, I guess. Friends and family. All right, I'm going to call that SOI. Good, which I'm glad you brought that up. Let's see. Garrett said geo leads, Reddit. Okay, I'm going to just call that cold calling. Garrett. All right. Did you say something, Braxton?
I said,
Oh, okay. Yeah, cold calls. Good. Yeah, and Garrett said on here geo leads. Referrals. So yeah, referrals I'm going to count as part of SOI. Okay. How else can we get
door knock.
business? Good. Door knocking.
Website.
Okay, good. Website. How else?
For sale by owner.
Okay, good. FSBOs. How else? Now, so let me, while you guys are thinking some more, let me just throw this out to you. I'm creating this list of leads. We're going to go through and talk about them. The idea behind this is for you to choose 1 or 2, well, 3, I'll say 2 or 3. 2 or 3, one of them has to be SOI. So in addition to SOI, 1 or 2. So when I say 1 or 2, I'm meaning in addition to SOI. I want you to choose 2 or 3, one of them being your SOI, that you're going to decide to work. And if you will work it and stick with it, it will work. I'll show you what the problem is, why it doesn't work for people. And it's because they go all over the place. But so how else can we get these? Go ahead. Oh, Aaron said expired.
Would a referral fall into sphere of influence? Like
Yeah.
someone you didn't know was referred?
Yes, I would still, yeah, because who are they getting referred from? So that's the reason I would say that is SOI. What else? There's a ton more.
Just listed, just sold.
Okay, just listed, just sold, that works. And then Brandon said mailers. I'm just gonna call it advertising.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'll do that one separate, mailers.
Yeah, we'll advertise it on Facebook.
Right. Yeah, that's why I'll do it two different ways, okay? How else?
I mean, if you're like part of a team, maybe you just get a you or something.
Okay, so, well, so that's typically gonna be a website. So here's what I'm gonna call that is, I'm gonna call sign calls. I'll just say signs. And so when you're saying if you're part of a team, somebody might hand you one. Typically, if they're gonna hand you like, hey, this person wants to go see houses, they probably called off of a sign. I mean, it could be a website too. But what else?
KSL. I mean, I guess that's for sale by owner, so.
Yeah, KSL could be for sale banner or even just app. You could run an ad there, I guess. Okay, how about this one? Open houses. So open houses is another way that we can get them. And then the other one, which we don't really do anymore, but I'll write it down, is floor time. And the reason I always write this one down is occasionally somebody will just call into the office and say, I need to sell my house. So that would be floor time. So usually what I always say is it's a good idea to be really nice to the receptionist, the person answering the phone for the office, because sometimes they get a call and they don't know what to do with it, and they'll send it to whoever's nice to them. So anyway, and now I don't know that happens as much anymore. Like I said, I wouldn't I wouldn't bank on building a business on it, but if I go back, probably 15-ish years ago, it was not uncommon for that to happen. In fact, there was a lady that I talked about her yesterday. She and I would role play together and then go door knocking. Her name was Shirley. She and I were constantly fighting for business. And I would ask her like sometimes like, hey, like, where'd you get that listing? Because I don't remember, we never door knocked that area. And I don't remember you saying you were calling that area. And she'd go, oh, it's just a referral. Well, what I found out later on was she and the receptionist, she would take the receptionist to lunch like once a week, and she was like really friendly with her. And what I found out later on was that when the receptionist would get a phone call, she'd go, hey, Shirley, here you go. So anyway, like I said, that doesn't happen too much anymore, but still worth being nice to. All right. So let me ask you this. I put these in 3 different columns. Essentially, the SOI could go either way depending on you, is why I put it in the middle. So when you look at these, what do these have in common and what do these have in common? These 2 lists. Go ahead, Drew.
One's very active, you're out, I say hitting the pavement basically, but not really, but you're actively working,
Good.
doing something,
This side you're active, which means this side is what?
stuff that just comes here.
Passive. Exactly. Good. Now, so here's the thing. What I want you to see from this is this column is active, this one is passive. And now keep in mind, what I'm wanting you guys to do is no matter what, you need to be working your sphere of influence, no matter what. But outside of that, if you will choose 1 or 2 from these other columns and do it, it will work. You just got to stick with it. Here's the problem, here's what happens. We're going to talk today, and I'm going to give you guys some ideas on for sale by owners. I'm going to give you some ideas on expired, those type of things. And some of you are going to get really excited and go, oh, I'm going to go do that, what Russ talked about here in terms of the expired. I'm going to go do this. So you're going to start working expired. And then what's going to happen, though, is you're going to talk to some other agent at the office that says, oh, I ran this great ad on Facebook, and I ended up getting a listing. And you're going to go, oh, shoot, I should do that. So then you're going to go and start doing some ads on Facebook. And then what's going to happen is somebody else is going to come to the office and say, I just was doing these geo leads off RedX. I was cold calling, and I came across like 3 people that are going to sell their house in the next little while. And then you'll go, oh, shoot, I probably should do some cold calls. So then you'll start doing cold calls for a day or 2. And then you're going to come back to a class and go, oh, shoot, but I haven't been doing expireds. I probably should do some more expireds. And then somebody else is going to go, oh, I've been calling for sale by owners, and man, they're like shooting fish in a barrel. And you're going to go, oh, I probably ought to do some for sale by owners, but maybe I should do an open house. Well, I probably ought to door knock for my open house, do some just listed, just sold. I ought to mail out for my open house. Well, maybe I ought to try to go take the receptionist to lunch, see if I can get some deals. Maybe I ought to buy a website, but I've been neglecting my expireds, and I ought to do some for sale by owners, but I didn't do my mailings, and I ought to try to get some signs out. Can you see what happens?
Chaos.
Chaos. That's exactly right. It becomes chaos and you'll get no business. Instead, if you will just decide, and now here's to some extent, you should do a little bit of especially these, you should do a little bit of them to figure out what you like or don't like. Like you might not know. You might like, well, I don't know which one to do. Great. Then go spend a day or 2 doing for sale by owners. Spend a day or 2 doing expireds to begin with, to figure out what do I want to do. But then once you choose, and here's the thing, if you get nothing else out of what we talk about today, and hopefully I've given you some good stuff already, but if you get nothing else, number 1 is work your sphere of influence. Number 2, pick 1 or 2 of these. Unless you say it was expired that you choose, just stick with it. Just don't deviate, meaning what?
For how long?
Till it works. And what I mean by that is the problem is agents will start to do it. Think of it this way. Think of it as for like digging for gold or mining for gold. And it's just on the other side of this wall, but you quit mining right here. So you're 6 inches away from hitting gold. But you quit and went and started mining somewhere else. See, that's the challenge that agents have, is they do this, what we talked about here, and they bounce all over the place. So they never actually get good at one of them. if you will choose one or two and then just stick with it, you'll figure it out and you'll get good at it. And we'll help you. I mean, I'm not saying you got to do it all on your own, but you got to figure it out. So like, here's what I mean by that is, for me, early on in my career, I bounced all over the place. I did it. The reason I can talk about that is I did it. Somebody would come to a sales meeting and go, oh, man, I just listed 2 for sale by owners. For sale by owners are awesome. And I'd be like, great, I got to go call for sale by owners. And then somebody else would show up and go, oh, man, we used to have a thing called the fact line, which was replaced basically by the internet. But where people would call off of, they could drive by a house and they would call a phone number and it would just tell them about the house. Well, it would capture their name and phone number. And so somebody would come in and be like, oh, I've been calling off my fact line and I'm getting a ton of, which basically is sign calls here. And they'd be like, I'm getting a ton of business off of it. And so then I'd be like, oh, I got to go call my fact line. And you bounce all over the place and it won't work. So stick with it. Choose a couple and stick with it and it'll work. We should say, come in, Rick. I think it was Rick's point. All right. Now, if you will do that, it will work. Okay. Now, there was something I was going to say. Question. I guess. Let me see if you guys have questions first, and then that'll give me a second to think of what I was going to say, or we'll go on to the next thing.
I mean, aside from floor time, is there one of those that you would say maybe don't focus on much?
Perfect. Thank you. That is. You just reminded me what I was going to do. All right. There are pluses and minuses to each of these columns. So let's talk about that, because yeah, essentially that's where you're going, Braxton, is what would be the positive, the good thing about working in this? Now there's positives and negatives, okay? But so like, especially for sale by owner and expired, what is the positive or the negative, or what's the positive of working the active column?
There's an unlimited amount of people you can try to get.
Okay, good. I like that. What else?
You know, with FSBO and expireds that they're in the market and they're like engaging, you know, either on buying or selling.
Okay, good. I like that. Okay, let me show you this. Think of it this way. So think of this as being a hurdle. And I know I'm not drawing these very
There's a
well.
lot more no's in the active side.
Okay, good. That's good. That's not a positive though.
I know.
So think of it this way. So I've drawn up here 3 hurdles. So think of it as like track hurdles. You have 3 hurdles you've got to get over. The first one is, do they want to buy or sell? So that's the first hurdle you've got to get over. The second hurdle you've got to get over is, are they willing to use an agent? And then the last hurdle you've got to get over is you. Are they willing to use you? Okay, so let me ask you. So now let's take a look at this. So to some extent, I'm answering your question, Braxton, but not fully. But let's look at an expired. Do they want to buy or sell?
Probably. I mean, if it expired, they want somewhere else.
They did, right? Were they willing to use an agent?
Possibly.
An expired?
Yes.
But they were willing to use an agent. So the only hurdle you got to get over with an expired is what? You. Get it to be you. Now let's look at it for sale by owner. Do they want to buy or sell?
Yes.
Do they want to use an agent?
Probably.
And they don't think they do. So now you know, I'm over this hurdle. I got to get over this one and this one. Now let's look at a door knock. Do they want to buy or sell?
No.
I mean, we don't know. See, on that one, we got to get over all 3 hurdles. So somewhat to answer your question, a little bit, you would look at this and go, well, expireds are probably a great place to work because they want to sell. They have used an agent. I just got to get it to be me. Now, what's the downside to working in this column, which you already said. So say it again, Carla.
There's a lot more no's on that column.
There's a lot more. I'm going to say it differently.
Responses as being no.
There's a lot more rejection. You're going to get rejected more often here. And how about with for sale by owners and expireds? Have you called any?
A couple, I didn't like it.
That was me. I found out really quick. I didn't really like it. Now I'm going to give you some
objection practice.
That's right. I'm going to give you some ideas on how to work the expireds that maybe will make it to where you will be okay with it though, instead of not liking it. But keep in mind, that's the downside to here is there's a lot more rejection over here. Over here, there's way less rejection, but what's the downside? I mean, well, actually, hold on.
Go faster.
Say that again. Say that again.
Like, you can't make it go faster.
That's right. You can't make it go faster. That's the challenge that we have with this side over here is, remember we just showed you the buyer cycle? And it's 6 to 9 months, and in my opinion, it's cut closer to 9 months than 6 probably right now, is you're not speeding that process up too much. You can a little, but you're not speeding it up too much in this area. So you kind of have to wait for the people to get ready. The good news is there's not as much rejection over here, but there's a lot more waiting for people to just show up. And the downside is the waiting is a lot long. You need to be able to go without an income a lot longer if you're only doing this than if you are doing some of this. So to some extent, I guess, and I'm not saying you should do this, but you might want to consider looking at this is, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to choose one out of this column and one out of that column that I'm going to work, and then stick to it.
So how much? Go ahead.
Well, isn't the active column new and then future? When you were saying you have 2 types of lead generation. Well, if you want some down business, but they are both. But I'm just saying, if I need to make some money, I've got to be out or not.
Yeah, I would agree.
And for future business, that's your passive side. You know,
Yep.
stuff that
Yep, that's why to some extent, I would say, for sure work your sphere of influence, maybe choose one out of this column and one out of this column that you're going to do, and then just stick with it. And the key thing is just stick with it, okay? Now, so now with that, any questions on this before I go to the next piece?
How much of your sphere of influence should be active versus passive? And where do you draw the line?
Oh, good question. So in my opinion, the SOI really should be, probably I would say 50-50. What I mean by that is you should be sending an email or some type of a snail mail to them every month, either email or a snail mail. But you should also, I think, depending on, I like to think about with you in your, and I've got a separate class that I'm going to teach you on SOI, but I like to think of it, it's pretty much monthly you should be making a phone call. So I would say to some extent your SOI is both, is I'm going to do some advertising to them, mailing, and we'll talk more about that in the SOI class, but you should also just be doing a check-in. Hey, just want to see if you have any questions. If you've heard of anybody, great, talk to you later. Okay? All right. No other questions. All right, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to pull the screen back down. I probably should have waited to show you the other thing until we did that. Okay, that's all right. All right, so now with that, I'm going to pull up and share my screen here for this. PowerPoint. All right, last time I did this on Zoom, it didn't work as well. Can you guys see just the 2018 profile of home buyers? And I can't see the chat box, so somebody unmute. Or not. Or don't unmute, I guess.
So wait, what was your question? Can we only see 2018?
Can you see just, are you seeing one chart or are you seeing more? I think it's
Just
working.
seeing one chart.
Okay, good. It's working. I think it works. All right. Here's what you're looking at. So I'm going to turn off the lights so you guys can see it better here. All right. So now this is going to feel like what I'm talking about for a minute is that I ultimately kind of just told you guys working for sale by owners and expireds is a good thing. It's going to feel like that I'm telling you not to do it for a minute, but I'm not. Okay. Now, here's what I want to go through with you guys is on this. So first, let me explain what you're looking at. What you're looking at is the, this one is the 2018. All the rest I'm going to show you are 2019. The only reason I'm not showing you the 2019 on this particular one that's on the screen is because in 2019, they didn't do this format, and I like this format. But I'll show you how they did it for 2019. So what you're looking at is NAR does a survey every year of home buyers and sellers. So let me explain how it works. Is in July of every year, they will send out a survey to people who have bought and sold homes. They don't use the MLS, they use tax records to do this because they want to include for sale by owners. And what happens then is people will, from July until September, NAR tries to get people to respond to this survey. Once September hits, so about right now for 2020, they're going to now just start to compile the data. So they will compile it between now and end of October. And then what happens is in November, they will release for us the profile of home buyers and sellers. So what you're looking at is one of the things that comes off of that. Now, let me pause for a minute. We're going to talk about two types of data, anecdotal data and empirical data. What is the difference between anecdotal data and empirical data? Does anybody know? Anybody on Zoom? What's the difference between anecdotal and empirical data?
So is an anecdotal what you're like actually looking for, and empiricals just kind of what you found, maybe not
So
exactly.
just the opposite, actually. So what happens is empirical data is actually like what we're looking at here. It's scientific research, basically. You're taking actual data and coming up with it. Anecdotal data is the stories we tell. So and the reason I bring that up to you is what we're looking at is empirical data. Anecdotal data is what you're going to hear from other agents. So let me give you an example of this. So what you're looking at here is the 2018 for sale by owners. What you're going to hear in this business, though, is that you're going to hear numbers between 80% and 98% of all for sale by owners end up listing their home. Has anybody heard that yet? Okay, well, you're going to hear that. You're going to hear for 80%, or the most common number I hear is 88% of all for sale by owners lists. That's actually not true. And people will quote it as, according to NAR, 88% of all for sale by owners lists. Well, what's happened is somebody has misconstrued the data, because this is the chart they're quoting, but that's not what this says. What this chart says is of all the homes that sold in 2018, and you can see this is where they get the idea of this 88%. You can kind of see. What they do is they look at this and go 88% of for sale by owners list. Well, that's not what this says. What this is saying is in 2018, 91% of the homes that sold used an agent, 7% were for sale by owner, and 2% were other. But people misunderstand the data and they go, well, 88% of all for sale by owners list. Well, that's not what this says. Okay. All right, let me show you what the 2019 looks like. So in 2019, they put it in this format. And I just like the other format better, which is why I kept the 2018 up there. But notice in 2019, it was 8% of all the sales that happened were a for sale by owner, and 89% were agent assisted. So it dropped a little bit of being agent assisted. See, unfortunately, we don't know how many try. The problem with it is to try to get the actual number of people who tried for sale by owner and then listed is impossible. Because there are some people that put a for sale sign out in front of their yard, and we would never know that they did that, and then they never listed, so we would never know that they ever. So it's impossible to know. So when you hear somebody say 88% of all for sale by owners list, or 90%, or whatever number, they're going off of that last chart is what they're quoting, but that's not actually what it said. Now, here's the interesting thing on this one. Of the 8% that actually sold that were a for sale by owner, 5% of those knew the seller or the buyer. Which means, could you have listed that house? No. Probably, I mean, very unlikely. Because they knew the seller, so it's very unlikely you were going to capture that. Were you standing out here a second ago?
At the front desk.
But at the door? Oh.
Why?
Because we were all like, and I almost said, come in, Ruth. All right. So only 3% of those sales of the 8 didn't know the buyer. So really there was 3%. So anyway, not that that matters too much. All right. Now, here's the next thing on this. So the next chart we're looking at here, this one is, again, we're looking at the 2019. Now, in November, I will buy the 2020, but this is the most current. So here's what I want you guys to see on this. Now, notice here that this shows of all the sellers, the median sales price was $275,000. Okay? Now let me explain the difference between average and median, because sometimes people aren't real clear. Average would be, if I wanted to take our average income, and let's say that, there's 5 of us here in this room. So let's say we took all 5 of us, we added together our income and divided it by 5. That's the average. Now, what if though, Carla's income last year was $30 million? I know it was more than that, right? But let's just say Carla made $30 million last year, and the rest of us made $100,000. What would be our average income out of the 5? So take 30 million, well, really it'd be 34 million, or no, not 34. Let's just say it ended up being 30 million. We divide it by 5. What's our average income? $6 million each. But if we each only made 100,000, that makes it look like the rest of us are making $1 million or $6 million a year, which is not true. That's if we did average. Now, if we did it as median, let's say she's making $30 million last year and I made 0, and you guys all made 100,000. What's our median income? 100,000. See, that's going to give us a more accurate picture. The problem is it makes it look like Carla then didn't make very much money. Makes it look like I made more. But would it be better for it to look like I made 100,000 or 6 million if my income is 0?
Probably, well, for accuracy, 100,000.
Yeah, for accuracy. So keep in mind, that's what we're looking at here. So we're looking at median, meaning we're throwing out the outliers. That's essentially what happens, is you get rid of the outliers by doing it as median. So the median selling price of all sellers was $275,000. Well, if you look to the right of that, the median selling price of all for sale by owners was $200,000. If they knew the buyer, it was $180,000, which makes sense, right? If you were selling your house to your kid, you're probably going to give them a pretty good deal. If they didn't know them, though, look at what their median price was $251,000. Now, here's the interesting thing. Why does somebody sell their house for sale by owner? Why would somebody do it without using an agent?
They want to make more money. They don't want to pay for it.
So they think they're doing it to save the commission. But let's see what, now remember, we're looking at empirical data. This isn't anecdotal. If they didn't know the buyer and they sold the home, their median price was $250,000 versus agent assisted was $280,000. So what's the percentage approximately difference of those? Approximately. Well, let's just round up and say it was 30. I mean, it's $30,000 difference. Let's round up and say that it was 300,000. It's what?
It'd be 15% more with it.
Essentially, let's say it's going to be probably 9 or 10, between 9 and 10. Because if we rounded this up to 300,000 and said it was a difference of 30,000, I mean, you'd have to round that up too, I guess. But essentially, it's 10%. So hold on. Why did they sell it for sale by owner? Brandon said because they're stupid. Right?
That's awesome.
But I mean, essentially, what it is showing is, in order to save 6%, it costs them 9 or 10. So here's the
4 to 5%.
Yeah, I mean, in essence, what this chart tells you is the median, again, taking out the outliers. And here's why, especially in our current market, I really truly believe that that is the case. And you know why? The reason I think that's the case is because you guys just saw our home prices have gone up dramatically over the last year. How many of the for sale by owners realize that their house has probably gone up $40,000?
Not very many.
Yeah, probably not very many at all. So they're going to go price their house based on what they think it is, when in actuality, we probably could sell it for more. Here's the other thing, especially in today's current market. What do you think the chances are of a for sale by owner getting multiple offers on the property?
I mean, I would say maybe a few, just because everything's so volatile right now.
Potentially, but hold on, let's look at it for a minute. How much does it cost for a buyer to use an agent?
2%.
Essentially nothing.
Oh, for buyers, sorry.
For the buyer, it's essentially nothing. So now let's be a buyer. If you were a first-time buyer and you didn't know what you were doing,
Would you just go on KSL and buy a house?
Yeah, are you gonna just go do that? Probably not. They're gonna go use an agent. Now, if you did though, if you were gonna go on to KSL and just go buy a house, what are you as that, even if you're a first time buyer, why would you do that?
Want somebody to negotiate for you.
No, why would you go do it without an agent?
Oh,
They-
Okay, good. So they think they're probably gonna have to pay an agent, but typically, they're gonna go do it because they think they can save the commission. Meaning the buyer thinks they can save the commission. So typically, the people going and buying it for sale by owner are most of the time a seasoned buyer. Because, and if you're a seasoned buyer, why would you go do that?
That you've done it before, and it's just people form habits.
Okay, and you think you're gonna be able to save the commission. See, I think part of why this ends up being like 9-ish% is the seller's thinking they're saving 6%, but the buyer wants to go in and save that 6%. You're not paying an agent, so you should give me a better deal on the house. And what ends up happening is they end up getting it for a much lower price. So hopefully you're seeing this of like, now here's the other interesting thing. Look at this. They first were FSBO and then used an agent. Their median sales price was $261. So they did better than doing it on their own, but they did worse than if they had just gone with just an agent right off the bat. Isn't that interesting?
And then why would that be?
Good question. Why would that be?
They're just tired and want to get it over with, maybe.
Okay, good. Could be. Here's why. What happens the longer a home sits on the market? Well, and what do you take yourself out of being an agent? You're just a consumer and you see a home sitting on the market for 3-4 months. What's your assumption? There's either something wrong with it, you can go in and offer a much lower price. So essentially, there's either something wrong with the house or it's way overpriced. So the reason I think that after they've been for sale by owner and then list is it's stale. The buyers assume there's either something wrong with it or it was overpriced, and so they're going to come in and try to get it for lower. And honestly, here's the other reason I think too. To some extent, I think some agents that go work for sale by owners find an uneducated buyer or seller, and rather than telling them the truth, they'll list it for a lower price to get it sold even quicker. Now, in today's market, good news is it's going to drive the price up anyway. But anyway. All right. Next. This is the method used to find a real estate agent by first time or repeat seller. Okay. So as you look at this, what you are seeing, well, you guys tell me what you notice when you look at this report. So this is how clients chose their agent if they were a seller. So how sellers chose their agent.
That was a question first thing you noticed.
Yeah, what stands out to you?
46% right there for the first time. Sphere of influence.
Yeah, good. And so on the first time seller, if we just look at all though, you're at 39%. This would be used the agent previously. In my mind, these two added together would be your sphere of influence. So it's 66% of all the sellers chose their agent because they were referred by or were a friend, neighbor, or relative, or they used the agent previously. Then what happens after that?
Dwindle down.
Yeah. Now, so to some extent, you can see now why I told you guys, just pick some of those other ways and do them, because it almost doesn't, like, outside of your sphere of influence, the rest of these almost don't matter. Just pick one or two and do it. Keep doing. All right, let's look at the buyer side. When you look at the buyer side, what do you notice?
Hurdles are still huge.
Yes, same thing. You add in the repeat as well. Maybe you used the agent previously, you're still at 53%, and then it drops off dramatically. On both of these charts, notice the third best way is other. I wish I knew what other was, because I would do it. But I don't know what it is.
Is that
So
like Pony or something?
no, I don't know what it is. They just are saying they did it some other way. All right, let me quit sharing here again. All right. Any questions on that so far?
Are those charts available?
So, yes, off of the NAR's website, you can get them. If to buy the PDF is $20, and it gives you way more than what I just showed. Tons.
Like a year, right?
$20 a year, yeah. I mean, you have to buy it every year, but you have to be logged in to your NAR account. If you just go in without logging in, it'll tell you it's like $150. So somebody who's not an agent has to pay like $150 for it. But once you log in, you can get a PDF of it for $20. So I buy it every year. All right. Well, now let's talk about this for a minute. So let's go through and hit on, let's talk about let's go for sale by owners first. So we're talking here, we got these lists here. If we talked about for sale by owners first, ultimately we just talked about the, I just lost the word. The things you jump over, hurdles. The hurdles. So you got those hurdles. In a for sale by owner, when they've already cleared hurdle number one, we know they want to buy or sell. So the only thing we've got to do is get them to be willing to use an agent and have that agent be us. Well, what would be the best way of doing that, do you think?
Logic.
Okay, so
You gotta convince them that it's a better idea to use you instead of themselves.
yeah, see, so part of why I showed you guys that chart is because if you don't believe it, you're going to struggle with for sale by owners. So the reason I showed you that chart is so that you could see the empirical data that says they're going to get less money by selling it themselves, the median. So meaning they're going to be outliers that that's not the case. But when you look at it, typically, they're going to end up with less money than if they just used an agent. Now, why would that be? Well, part of it is we already talked about. The other thing is this. I remember I was home one day, up, couldn't sleep at night, so I'm up watching TV, and I'm sitting there just flipping through some channels, and this was before Netflix, so like you actually watch TV. But I'm on there watching TV, and I see an infomercial about buying investment properties. So I'm like, I'm going to watch this and see what happens. One of the ways that they recommend of going and getting good deals. So the first thing they talked about, so actually let me even, because this is actually good for you guys to know in terms of you investing in properties. The first thing they talked about, which I liked this part, was it doesn't matter what you buy the property for, it's what you're going to be able to sell it for later that matters. Meaning you need to make the money going into the property, not coming out. So what they were saying is you got to try to get a good deal on the property before you got to make the money when you purchase, not when you sell. Does that make sense? Meaning you got to get the deal on the purchase, not the sale. So what they recommended to do was this, and this is the part that I was like, I can't believe they're saying this. But what they recommended is one of the ways they recommended doing that is go find a for sale by owner and go offer them whatever they want for the house. On this thing, they were saying, go pay them whatever they want for the house. Just go tell them, yep, I'll pay you that price. Then what they said you do, and here was their logic behind it, is the seller is then going to go and make decisions, meaning like they're going to go plan where they're going to move to, and they're going to do all this stuff. Now, I am not an advocate of this. I'm just telling you what I think happens here. Is what they then said is the seller's going to go make plans, and then you go do your inspection, and after your inspection, you come back and get them to reduce the price dramatically because of all the problems you find in the house. And what they said is what they were recommending. Again, I'm not recommending this. I'm just telling you why I think sometimes this happens. Is you get an educated buyer who goes in and says, okay, I'm going to put my due diligence to be like 3 weeks out. And then they wait till the 3-week date to go in and go, this is all of the stuff I want you to do on the property. Well, the sellers now made decisions. They've got property lined up. They've got to close on. Then all of a sudden, now the buyer's coming in going, well, hey, either you do all this stuff or reduce the price X amount, or I'll just cancel. Well, the seller's now in a position of like, we've already put money down. Like that's part of what I think goes on is because the seller doesn't know enough about it, the buyer comes in and takes advantage of it. Well, could be. So, but here's the thing. So part of why I say that is I want you guys to understand and have the conviction that when you're talking to us for sale by owner, that you can say, look, I think I can come out and show you how I can get your home sold and still net you more money. Because based on what we saw there, you potentially can. And especially because, like I said, there are a lot of times that the seller is, see, part of what goes on is this too with this for sale by owner. If this is their house, their marketing reach looks like that. Versus with ours, we can do something more like this in terms of our reach on the MLS. See, they can go throw their property on KSL, but how many people are looking on KSL? Meaning, like in Utah, a lot. But if somebody's moving from California, do they even know about KSL? So are they going to go on there to find it for sale by owner? No. So they're missing out on a pool of buyers. How about this one? Relocation. Somebody's job's transferring them in here. They're going to go look at for sale by owners? Nope. Because their company's telling them, we'll pay for your move, but you need to use this agent. See, their reach for a for sale by owner is this one ring. Our reach goes way further out. So that's part of the, I mean, just again, simple supply and demand economics tells you the more people who are interested in a home, the more money you're going to get, the more advertising you can get. So we can net them more money. So part of what you want to do when you're calling a for sale by owner is letting them know, and actually what you're wanting to do is just saying, look, I just want to come out and share some ideas with you. Now, part of what you may do is get that report from NAR and take it out and show them. Look, here's on median, this is what happens. So part of it is though for you, you just have, the biggest thing if you want to work for sale by owners is you actually have to believe that it's to their benefit to use you. If you can do that, you'll be okay in calling for sale by owners. All right, now let me, so for a minute here, let me tell you this. In terms of working for sale by owners, I feel like you have two approaches. The first approach is you got to be real aggressive, which Brandon, maybe why you said you tried it a few and just decided you didn't like it, is in order to get them, you got to be pretty aggressive, meaning like this. So role play with me, Rick, you're for sale by owner. Ring, ring. Oh, hi, is this the owner of the home? Yeah. Hey, my name's Russ, I'm with Century 21. Are you home now? Oh yeah. I'll be right over, click. Like that, you almost got to be that aggressive. Almost. If you want to get for sale by owners, like, hey, are you home? Yep. All right, I'll be right over. I'm going to talk to you about selling your house. Click. And then jump in your car and go. Like, you got to be aggressive.
You know what's interesting, Russ? You in this presentation, this gives a better idea now why what we role play probably makes more sense. This is the very data behind it that is the reason we design scripts the way they are and roll through it the way we are, primarily with the for sale by owner. You got to be aggressive.
Yep. So you have to take it totally laid back. There's no in between. If you're in between, it will not work. You either got to be really aggressive or you got to be really laid back. Now, here's the problem. If you're going to be laid back with for sale by owner, you're going to miss out on a lot of them, which I'm not, which is okay. I'm just saying, if you're going to take a laid back approach, you'll get some, but you're going to miss out on a lot because there are more people that are aggressively going after them. And so you got to be prepared that you're going to lose out on a lot. And you just got to be okay with, I'm going to do a bunch of these. And let me give you an idea of how you take the laid back approach. Is and I've seen agents do this approach and have it work as well. Just know you're going to list less than if you will take the more aggressive approach with people. And again, I don't care which way you want to go, or don't work for sale by owners at all. Remember, the idea of today is for me to just help you figure out what you want to do. The laid back approach is going to be more of a, hey, so role play this one with me, Carla. Ring, ring.
Hello.
Hi, my name's Russ. I'm with Century 21. And I noticed you had your home for sale by owner. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I'm not calling to try to get you to list your home with me. I just work with a lot of buyers and sellers in the area. And I just wanted to see if I could set up a time to come by and take a look at your home and see if it would work for any of my clients.
Well, we're looking at a pretty busy road, so I don't think so. I think we're gonna get that sold pretty easily.
That's great, but let me just ask you, if I had a buyer, would you be okay if I brought them?
Well, of course.
Okay, great. I just want to come by and take a look at the home so that I'm familiar with it and I can understand what you're trying to how much the home is worth, what it looks like. I can talk to my buyers about it.
Oh, if you have a buyer, sure.
Well, I don't know until I see it, but that's why I want to come see it.
Sounds
Okay, well, so now here's the thing. Remember yesterday I talked about to you guys about you got to set an appointment every day? Early on, I would count that as an appointment. Today, I would never count that as an appointment. Because what does Carla think I'm coming over for?
Just a look.
Just a look. Now, so remember, I'm taking this laid back approach. On the laid back approach, you're going to do a lot more work for less listings than being more aggressive, but it'll still work. So I go to your house now. While I'm there at your house, I'm just going to, hey, this is great. Wow. How long did you do the carpet? And how old is the roof? And what, blah, blah. I'm just going to ask a bunch of questions. Oh, man, why would you sell such a beautiful home?
Because we're gonna move on the other side of town.
You're-
That's my husband's work.
Go closer to your husband's work. Okay, cool. Well, that's great. So now part of what I'm asking these questions for is to figure out is their motivation. So I'm just going to keep asking questions and finding out. Well, so how long are you going to try to do it before you would consider listing?
Fairly quickly.
Oh, great. Then this is what I want. Now, so here's the idea though. Typically they're going to go, I don't know. I mean, we're probably not, whatever. Like if you're taking the laid back approach, you got to just take the approach of, hey, would it be okay if I just stay in touch with you and see how it's going? I would, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Do you have all the forms you need? Like you almost become a resource for them.
You said you had a couple buyers. When do you think you're going to bring them by?
Well, like I said, I wasn't sure if the home would work for them. And after looking at the house, I'll talk to the ones that I have and we'll see. But I got to find out for sure if they're interested.
Okay.
So, but then I'm going to say, look, do you have the, one of the things you're going to be required to do is to fill out seller disclosures. Do you have a copy of those that you can fill out for the buyer?
Sure.
You do have them? Oh, great. Okay.
Oh,
I mean, if they have them, great. What about a purchase contract? And now typically what they're going to say, yeah, I got one. Where did you get it? I just went on Google and found one. Okay, well, I would recommend you use the one that's approved for our state. I'd be happy to see if you're going to take the laid back approach. I can't help you fill it out, but I'll give you the form. See, if you're going to take the laid back approach, you got to approach it to try to overwhelm them with, okay, what about lead-based paint? Are you aware of what you need to do with that? Okay, how about, I don't know, what else? What am I not thinking?
Well, FHA,
Yeah, are you willing to sell it FHA or VA? And you understand what the difference of that? No. Like you're trying to almost, but you're taking the laid back approach. So you either do a laid back or you got to be really aggressive with for sale by owners. If you are somewhere in the middle, it won't work. Is what my experience is. It doesn't work. And guess where most agents are? In the middle.
The other question is, where do you keep earnest money?
Yeah.
I mean, what title company are you going to use? Have you talked to the lender? What loan are they doing? I mean, there's a barrage of questions on the laid back approach that you could do to make them go, I don't know what to do.
Yeah. Yeah. You can, have you considered how you might use points as a way to leverage an offer? I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, well, we probably need to get together and talk about that. So does that make sense?
I was just asking Fred this exact question yesterday. I said, Fred, what about these for sale by owners? And they called me, and his example was, okay, role play with me. And I said, and thinking, and he said, oh no, the client says, not another Century 21 agent. And he says, well, you know what? And he said exact words. I feel the same way too if I had a lot of agents. But Century 21 agents are known to be very aggressive, and I would be just as aggressive helping you get your home
That's right.
sold.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, see, that's what I was going to say. If you can take that, sometimes people do feel like, well, you're kind of aggressive. That is the way to respond. Well, let me ask you this. When we get a buyer, do you want somebody that's going to be laid back, or do you want them to be aggressive on getting your home sold? Yeah, good point. Great. Let's sign the contract. So, make sense? All right, next, let's talk about expireds. Now, here's the way most agents do expireds, and you can do it this way, and it's totally fine. Like, I'm just going to give you a couple of ideas. The first way that typically they do it is they'll go to the MLS, they'll pull up homes that expired, and then they just get on the phone and call it. The challenge that we have in today's world of working expireds that way, it is hard to find a phone number. Like when you go try to track down a phone number, it's hard to find phone numbers for people. So the first challenge you're going to have on getting expired, now remember the hurdles, they want to sell, they've already used an agent, the only hurdle you got to get over is getting it to be you. So when you try to call them, the challenge you're going to have is tracking down phone numbers. And other agents are going to have that issue as well. So as a result of that, here's what I recommend to do. Now, how I would recommend you guys do expireds, and one of our, Facebook's a good idea. One of our agents here, Brian Noel, he is on track. You know how much he's going to make this year? Over 500,000.
Somewhere closer to 6 or 7.
Yeah. And his two ways of working, he has two ways that he works. One is SOI, number two is expired. And the way he works expired is what I'm going to tell you right now. So this is what I would recommend for you guys. Is instead of just calling up them on the phone, instead what you do is this. Identify an area. So pick an area that you want to work, expired listing. And I would recommend one of three areas, either close to the office here, close to your house, or just go pick an area that you want to get listings in. So whatever it is, but instead of doing a humongous area, pick an area like this. Now, the question I always get asked is how big of an area? And I'll tell you how you're going to decide that. I can't tell you how big of an area to do. You got to decide that. But here's how you're going to decide is go do a search of an area. So just pick an area. I don't care what it is. If you wanted to do your neighborhood, start with that. But just pick an area, go on the MLS, draw a circle or a square or whatever for that area, and then see how many homes expired in the last year. If you picked your neighborhood and there was 2, you probably want a bigger area. But if you picked your entire neighborhood and there was 30, you might be like, well, that's good enough. So, I mean, I'm not saying 30 is even the number. I'm just saying you want enough to work. So here's the good news. You can pick an area and then you could go work that area. And if you feel like I didn't pick a big enough area, just go bigger. If you pick an area and you feel like it's too big, and the way you're going to realize it's too big is you feel like you're driving all over town. If you feel like you're driving all over town and not talking to people, it's too big of an area. Shrink it. So there's not a right answer. Just you decide. And here's the good news. If it's too big, shrink it. If it's too small, make it bigger. Like just adjust it. But here's what he does is he's picked an area and then he'll go out and knock on the door of that expired. Now, what do you think happens when you go knock on the door of that expired? Probably half the time or maybe even more than half the time. Like right now, if you went and knocked on any door out here, what do you think is going to happen most of the time? Yeah, nobody's home. They don't answer the door. So that being the case, what you're going to do then is instead of leaving, see now when I first started working expireds, I tried sort of this concept, but I didn't do it the way that Brian does it. And it's genius the way he's doing it. The way I did it was I went and knocked on this door and nobody was home. Then I jumped in my car and drove to the next house and knocked on the door and nobody was home. Jumped in my car and drove. And I did this when I started doing it. Part of why I say you'll figure out, I did it for all of Salt Lake County. That's too big. Too big of an area. Because I spent the entire, like there was 10 expireds and I spent the entire day driving around to these 10 houses and I talked to one person and that one person that I talked to had a job transfer and it fell through, so now they weren't selling their house. So I spent almost the entire day driving around for nothing. So the next day I went and did it again and it was about the same thing. Like I talked to 1 or 2 people and got nowhere with it. So I found out pretty quickly. Remember I told you guys, I did all this, try this, and then now go try that, try this, try that, never honed anything in. This is the idea of honing it in. Instead, what you do is this, pick a smaller area. You go knock on that door and they're not home. You then go to the neighbor and knock on their door. And then you go to the neighbor, and you do 3 to 5 houses this way, cross the street, do 6 to 10 houses this way, cross the street, and 3 to 5 houses this way. Now, let me show you what this looks like. So, Brandon, we're going to pretend I went to this house and nobody's home. So I went to that house, nobody's home. I come back, I go, they don't answer the door. So now I go to you're the next door neighbor. So role play with me. Knock, knock.
Hello, can I help you?
Yeah, my name's Russ. I'm with Century 21. I'm actually not here to talk to you, so you don't have to worry. I'm not trying to sell you anything or sell your house or anything. I actually wanted to get hold of your next door neighbor, and they had their home for sale. Now, remember, I pulled them up for the last year. So I'm going to say they had their home for sale like 6 months ago. Do you know if they still want to sell their house?
I'm actually not quite sure.
Okay, you're not sure if they do or not? Now, go ahead.
Or is there a possibility that it could have already sold?
Well, it's possible that they did then sell it for sale by owner or something. Possible, for sure. But I'm not going to go knock on the door. I'm going to check the MLS to make sure it never relisted. So but even with that, it is possible that maybe they sold it for sale by owner or something.
Okay, I'll say yeah. Yeah, they want to sell.
Oh, they do. Oh, perfect. Now, even if he said no, whether he says yes or no, my next question is going to be the same. And that is, well, do you know when the best time for me to catch them at home is?
I think they get home around 7 o'clock.
Okay, 7 o'clock. Now, here's the thing. He just told me, yes, they still want to sell and they get home at 7. Guess where I'm going to be at 7 o'clock tonight? See, what by me doing this, I'm finding out whether they want to sell or they, now, let's say you said no. So, you know if they still want to sell?
Yeah, I haven't talked to them since it expired, so I have no idea.
So you're not sure. Okay, cool. Well, so do you know when the best time to catch them at home is?
Probably about 7 o'clock.
About 7. Okay, and do you happen to have a phone number that I could call them on?
I do, but I'm not.
Totally understand. If I were you, I'd feel the same way. Here's my card. Would you mind just passing it on to them? And if they are, ask them to give me a call.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, how about you? When do you plan on moving?
I don't.
No plans. Okay, well, hey, the reason I ask is, holy cow, the market is going nuts right now. Like you probably have more equity than you've ever had in your home, and probably more than you even realize. So how long have you lived here?
For 6 years.
6 years, really? That's awesome. Where'd you move from?
Idaho.
From Idaho to here?
Yeah.
Really? What brought you down here?
My job transfer.
Your job. Cool. What do you do for work?
I'm a spine surgeon.
Oh, wow. Spine surgeon. Wow. Good job. Well, hey, well, let me ask you, like, if you ever were to move, where would you go next?
Park City.
Oh, to Park City. Awesome. When would that be?
I don't know, maybe in a couple of years.
In a couple of years. Oh, well, God, that's great. Well, let me ask you. I mean, in a couple of years, when you do that, obviously you would want to be kept up on the market and stuff between now and then.
Yeah.
Right. So I've got a select group of people that I just stay in touch with. What I would like to do, I mean, and I would be happy to do it right now even for you, is I could put together a market analysis for you and come give it to you, or I can just keep you updated on what's going on in the market. And as we get closer, then I could do that for you. Would you want to have that done now?
The updates would be nice.
Okay, well, great. Let me get your contact information and I'll add you to my list and blah, blah, blah. Okay, now, then as soon as I'm done, I'm going to leave and I'm going to go to Carla.
Hello.
Hi, my name's Russ. I'm with Century 21. You don't have to worry. I'm not here to try to see if you want to buy or sell. I actually was trying to get a hold of your neighbor 2 doors down, Braxton. Do you know him very well? Oh, well, they had their home up for sale a while back. And I don't know if you're aware, but our inventory is so low right now. Like it's crazy low. So I'm doing anything I can to try to help buyers find a house. Do you know if they still want to sell?
Yeah, they do.
They do. Great. Do you know when the best time I can catch them at home is?
7 o'clock.
Probably about 7 o'clock. Okay. Do you happen to have a phone number that I could try to call them to see if they want to sell?
Sure.
Great. Now I got the phone number. Now I know that they want to sell. Like now, notice I'm just going to do that same thing for 3 to 5 houses down. Typically, I typically stayed on the side of doing 3. The further away you get, the less likely that. Although in Utah, to some extent, they know. But the further away you get, the less likely they know. But then I'll cross the street and hit these ones. You're bound to hit somebody. If you did 3, 3, and 6, so out of 12 houses, you're bound to get somebody that says, oh, yeah, no, they were building a new house and it fell through and blah, blah, blah. I mean, who knows? But here's the other side of it. I'm just looking for information to figure out, do I want to go back? Now, to some extent, it might be a really nice house that I want, or I might, like I said, the neighbor might say, yeah, you should talk to him. Like, I'm just looking for something that way to know what to do to get a hold of it. Does that make sense? Yeah, that's the idea. And then hopefully, if not, I end up picking up them as a lead. Now, so what I'm going to do is I do that in this area, then I'm going to leave and go over to the next area and do 3 to 5 houses that way, across the street, 3 to 5 houses, go to a house down here, talk to them, or go 3 to 5 houses. Like, I'm just going to stay in that area and keep doing that. And then every day I'm going to keep an eye on so I'm going back a year to begin with, but then I'm keeping an eye on every day, anything in that area that shows up. Because then the idea is I can be there the next day knocking on the door. Tons of people are calling on them. Hardly anybody's knocking on their door. You stand out by knocking on the door and saying, I work with a lot of buyers and sellers in the area. Saw your hand came up off of the computers and expired. Just wanted to see, are you still interested in selling?
So I have a question. With COVID and stuff, like, is it, all right, like, how are you doing that? You know, when people are like, some people are wary about it, some people don't care.
Wary about you knocking on the door?
Yeah.
Oh, so I would do it this way. I would knock on the door and then I will just stand way back. And I would I'd be this far away when they open the door and just
here's what we're finding in our coaching is that a lot, we're door knocking right now. People want to talk because they're tired of getting cooped up. And I think you get weird, you're always gonna get a person that's a little strange, offset, or perfectly being normal and just don't want breathing on. But we're discovering they are like, I need the human to talk to. So I would certainly step back. You don't ask questions. I mean, this, what he's teaching right now, I think is one of the most golden opportunities there is right now. Because they're, first off, you're face to face, you get to use more of your communication skills. Just ask the right question. But knock them without question.
What about like masks and stuff? Are you walking around with one on or?
I think you're fine if you did. But for me personally, I don't know if I would, only because I feel like it's 55% of communication is body language, and they can't see those micro expressions. So I would probably have one in my hand, but then I would stand back and then I would even say to them, if you want me to put a mask on, I'll be happy to do that.
I think that's brilliant, actually. Just using it as a prop.
Yeah.
If you have to put it on.
Yeah, I would just kind of just have it in my hand and just, hey, if you want, if you feel more comfortable. I mean, if somebody said, what are you doing knocking on my door?
Okay, yeah, I was curious about that because I feel like there's gonna be conversations like that crop up and I don't know how to handle it, so.
Cool. All right. We're out of time. What questions? What other questions? Anything online from you guys, question-wise? All right.
I got one more.
Okay.
With FSBOs, are you just going on like KSL and stuff? And looking for them, calling them out?
Good question. So either, yes, you can do it off KSL. The other option is you can sign up through the RedX. So that's the website, the RedX. And you get, although don't sign up off the website, sign up through our office because you get a discount. And do you remember how much RedX is?
I don't remember.
It's like $50 a month or something, but
We've got a really good discount.
Yeah.
So.
but it'll provide you with everyday expired and for sale by others. So,
Okay.
And I think they have a GOV.
and you get some deals.
Yeah. So
I
it's
mean, you could spend.
whatever your menu wants.
Yeah.
Your menu. It's.
Yeah.
If you want all of them, then you pay more, obviously, the less you have. So.
Cool. All right. No questions online either. Okay. Well, thanks for being here, guys. So Tuesday's class, we'll meet on Tuesday. We're going to be doing presentations is what we'll be talking about. Listing, basically the listing presentation is what we're going to go through. Okay. Awesome. Thanks for being here.
Is there a way I can get put on the email list for like the Zoom meeting
Yes. So have you signed in or not yet
with,
with the company?
yes,
When did you join?
like Tuesday officially?
Okay. Yeah. I will add you probably on Friday, tomorrow.
Okay.
They always, once a week, they give me the list of all the people who have joined, and then I add